Hey everybody, it's me. Today or this week we have a mini lesson that we would love for you to go through before you read book 12. And what I'm going to do is just record myself going through it, pausing for imaginary questions and then answering those imaginary questions. So I'm going to share my screen so that you can see it. So what we are doing this week is we're talking about epic similes. And so epic similes are just like a regular simile, but they are #epic. And we'll talk about what that means in a second. Homer uses a lot of epic similes, and it really helps to be able to recognize them in order to understand book 12 and to like really analyze it in a deeper way. Sometimes they'll be called Homeric similes, but we'll just call them epic similes. So a regular old simile, as you know, is a comparison between two things using like or as. So the example here is, this week, I've been busy as a bee. I'm going to do like a Dora the Explorer thing. Stop. What are the two things that are being compared? If you said me and the bee, you are correct. So in this simile, I am comparing myself to a bee. Miss Duec, the bee. The first thing that you want to do when you look at a simile is to just identify what are the two things being compared. What are the two nouns that are being compared? Your smile is like the sun. This coffee is like my lifeline, right? So coffee, lifeline, smile, sun, Miss Duec, bee. The second thing that you want to do is you want to ask yourself, well, why are these things being compared? So in the example of a bee, the reason that I am comparing myself to a bee is because I've been super busy, but not just like regularly busy, right? The same way that bees sort of flit from like flower to flower to flower, and then they go back and they put the honey and then they build the hive. And like, I don't know that much about bees, but they do a lot of things. That's how I feel. I've been like answering emails and preparing lessons and like doing things around the house and, you know, trying to Zoom conference and trying to learn distance learning. So I've been doing all of these little things in the same way that a bee goes to a flower. I'm not comparing myself to a bee because I'm yellow, because I sting people, although I can. No, I can't. I'm so nice. Because I'm yellow, because I sting people, or because I'm like a fat little honeybee, right? The reason I'm doing it is because I'm trying to show not just that I've been busy, but also in what way I've been busy. So similes really help us visualize and understand things that maybe we wouldn't understand before. Epic similes are the exact same thing, but they're different because they're much longer. So an epic simile in a text may take up like 10, 11, 12 lines of text. And it won't just say, I'm as busy as a bee. It will say something like, as a bee goes from flower to flower, building the hive and making honey and doing all of these things, so was Miss Duec during this first week of distance learning. So it's not just that it's comparing Miss Duec to a bee, but it's like really going into depth. Why? Why, Homer? Well, the reason that we have these is because they help us better understand what Odysseus is describing. Dude, this is a text with cyclopses, with six-headed monsters, with monsters that like suck up a bunch of water and then spit it out in a whirlpool. These aren't things that we're used to. And so because we're not used to them, Odysseus gives these long similes to help us understand them in a different way. This helps us, again, take something unfamiliar and compare it to something that is familiar. It also helps us visualize Odysseus's experience. So like the idea of a flower or like a bee floating from flower to flower, it creates a visual in our mind. And it will also help us characterize. So we've seen this before. I'm gonna do this example from book 10. So this is at the very end of book 10, and this is after Odysseus rescues his men and turns them from pigs into men, and then like brings them back to meet the rest of the crew. So we're on Circe's island. This is like the end of book 10. He says, "And there on the decks I found my loyal crew, consumed with grief and weeping live warm tears. But now, as calves in stalls when cows came home, droves of them herded back from field to farmyard, once they've grazed their fill, as all their young calves came frisking out to meet them, bucking out of their pens, lowing or mooing nonstop, jostling or pushing, rushing round their mothers. So my shipmates there, at the sight of my return, came pressing round me now, streaming tears, so deeply moved in their hearts, they felt as if they'd made it back to their own land, their city, Ithaca's rocky soil where they were bred and reared." So again, 11 lines here, right? Maybe 12, I don't know, I didn't do the math. The first thing we want to do is we want to identify what are the two things being compared. So he's comparing his loyal crew, right? He's saying that they're consumed with grief. And he's saying they were as calves in stalls when cows came home. So his loyal crew, just like baby cows when the mama cows came home. Cool, I think. The second thing you want to do is just ask why. Why would you compare your loyal men to baby cows when their moms come home? Take a second, think about that. If you said to show how happy they were at Odysseus's return, you're absolutely correct, right? So we're creating a visual that's like so overwhelming. It's like these baby cows like rushing out to go see their mother. They're so happy to see their mother there. If you also said to show how important Odysseus is to these men, you're correct, right? It's not just that they're like happy to see their friend. No, they're babies, adorable little baby cows. And Odysseus is the mother, right? Like the life giver, the provider of sustenance. This is a pretty deep simile. And keep in mind, this is Odysseus saying this about himself, right? So that leads us to the third thing that we can do, which is characterize Odysseus. If you're feeling friendly, you can characterize him by saying that he is very important, that he is the backbone of these people, of the crew, that he's a very good leader. But if you're not feeling so friendly, you can think about how you would feel if, like, I forgot to turn off my Zoom camera and you heard me talking to somebody and I was saying, "Oh my God, my students were so glad to see me. They were like baby cows, and I was like the mama cow. And they were like, let's talk, we love you, we missed you." Chances are, probably wouldn't feel so good about me if you heard me saying that. So on another hand, like we can also characterize Odysseus as a little narcissistic here, as self-centered, and maybe as like overestimating his own importance in this situation. I think you can go either way, just like how when you're characterizing Odysseus as heroic or unheroic, you are going to be able to go either way. So the actual scene is the fact that Odysseus's men are coming up to him and crying with joy that he made it back alive. Odysseus is comparing the men doing this to little baby cows jumping with joy. Look at the cows, they're so cute. He's also saying, this is like the second part, it's like so good to see Odysseus that it's like almost as good as being back home. Almost as good as Ithaca. That's how much we love Odysseus. And he's doing this, again, to characterize, to visualize, and to like help us understand what this scene looks like. So the next part, I know that was a lot, so if you want to like pause and digest, feel free. The next part that we have is finding them. So to be totally honest, sometimes I don't recognize that I'm reading an epic simile until I'm a few lines in. And usually I recognize when I'm like really confused. I'm like, why are they talking about fishermen right here? Like, what is happening? So it's good to like be able to identify clues that help us understand that we're in an epic simile. The first clue that we have is you will find as or as if, right? But now, as calves in stalls when cows came home, you can just replace like with that, right? Like cows in stalls, calves in stalls when cows come home. He's saying it's as if they are like calves in stalls. There on the bottom, we have another one, right? They felt as if they'd made it back to their own land. So it's almost like they made it back to their own land. That is going to introduce our comparisons. The use of so or so now is going to finish our comparison. That's like when we know what's happening in real life. So as calves in stalls when cows came home, so my shipmates there at the sight of my return. As busy as a bee floating from flower to flower, so Miss Duec during the first week of distance learning. Boop and boop, right? Two things being compared. And why? Well, this is what we talked about, right? It's going to help us visualize the text. In this case, we picture Odysseus's men coming back and like just how happy they were and how overwhelmed they were. It also helps us characterize a relationship, a feeling, or an experience. We can see how important Odysseus is to his men just by the way they react. We can also see how important Odysseus thinks that he is. And again, we have a story here with like men turning into pigs and monsters and cyclopses and death and like crazy things. It helps this story feel a little bit more relatable to us. All right. For this week, you're going to be finding your own epic simile in book 12. There are a few. You can choose which one you like the most. If this was confusing, come to Zoom office hours. Schedule an appointment individually. We are here to help you. I know that this is a strange and weird and confusing situation, but do reach out so that we can know what we need to do to help. Okay? Yay! So that's it for me. I hope that this mini lesson was helpful. And again, reach out if you need anything. Bye!